They like to say keep pounding. Those Carolina Panthers fans, it's what they did in this one. Off the shoulders of Deontay Foreman, 31 attempts for a $130 and a rushing touchdown. P.J. Walker did enough to get the job done. 10 of 16, a $108, ran it 14 yards of his own. Managed this game against a divisional opponent that they should have beat some 12 days ago, but they do get revenge in this spot as they better the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons fall to 4-6 and out of first place in that division. Marcus Mariota had trouble staying upright in this one. Sacked 5 times, and it could have been a whole lot worse if not for his ability with his feet. But Mariota, 19 of 30, a $186, 2 touchdowns, not enough as the Panthers win it 25-15. All right, let's break it down with CBS Sports NFL writer Tyler Sullivan. Tyler, like the sun coming up in the morning, this one happened, as they do here on Thursday night. Coming out of this matchup, some interesting thoughts to maybe wrestle with down the line, but let's operate in the here and now. Your biggest takeaway from this game on either side is what?
Yeah, well, the first takeaway is that neither one of these teams is truly contending in the NFC South. For me, this was a night for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That, I think, is the big takeaway. You know, as much as we want to say, oh, the Atlanta Falcons, if they win, you never know what can happen. They're going to be in sole possession of first place even for a moment. No, we saw last week the ceiling for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in that final 40 seconds against the Rams. That, to me, is the team to beat here. Obviously, they were the betting favorite to win this division, but just a poor start to the season for them. Neither one of these teams, the Falcons or the Panthers, again, look, you're looking at those standings. Everybody's under 500. No one's particularly good. But to me, there's a clear difference between what Tampa is capable of doing and what we saw tonight. Yes, the conditions were bad. Yes, it was just kind of a mucky kind of a game. But you look at those quarterbacks, you look at how these teams operate, and the ceiling is just not there for them to contend with a Tampa Bay team who I think is going to get right over the second half of the season. So that's my biggest takeaway, is that the biggest winner wasn't even playing in this game. How about this? They're not even in this country. They're in Germany right now, laughing it up.
That's a fair point to be made here. And on the tail end of this one, it makes a whole lot of sense. But sort of within that vein, how big of a missed opportunity was this for Atlanta? Yes, they kind of show their true colors here as a team that's maybe not built to contend, but you take a look at the road ahead, a very favorable schedule for the Falcons, and you let one slip here to a lesser team. How big of a miss is this for this squad?
Not only that, it's a division opponent too. So when you're talking about these tiebreakers, all this stuff is going to come into play here if you're Atlanta. So yeah, no, certainly a missed opportunity. I mean, we're talking about a Carolina Panthers team that was on the field defensively for 70-plus plays just a few days ago in a blowout loss to the Carolina Panthers. They just fired 2 of their coaches along the coaching staff on the defensive side of the ball. This should have been a game where you could really utilize your running game. The guy was saying earlier, the conditions are bad. You utilize your running game and just run it down their throats. The opposite happened. The Panthers were the ones, Deontay Foreman were the ones running it down your throat on the way to victory here. So a really missed and squandered opportunity here for Atlanta across the board in this season, but also it's a squandered opportunity here for Marcus Mariota. Poor game for him overall, really bad in certain situations. Should have had multiple interceptions in my estimation. Had one throw that was picked off, but he was on the ground, and it was just one of the worst throws that I've seen this season. And so for me, that's a missed opportunity for him now, because if he was able to win this game and they're all of a sudden in the driver's seat, at least momentarily, in the NFC South, you're not having the conversations that I think we're going to start having over the next 24 hours here, is whether or not we see Desmond Ridder at some point in this second half. If all of a sudden they're contending for this division, you're sticking with what's working in Marcus Mariota. Now you're starting to assess. Maybe we kind of get into this retool mode and see what we have in a third-round pick in Ridder.
Yeah, could have been a nondescript Thursday night, but a lot of ripple effects coming out of this, especially on the losing side. On the winning side, you just mentioned that there's the running game here for Carolina that gets the job done, but I want you to assess the play of P.J. Walker in this one. He was benched a week ago and comes back out and leads his team to a victory, albeit 10 completions here, and it was predicated by the run. But how impressed were you just by the poise of the young man in this spot?
Yeah, I think he kind of, encapsulated the entire team. He gets benched. The team gets blown out last week. It was a good rebound for the Carolina Panthers all the way around, and it starts with that quarterback as well. Obviously, they're not asking him to do too much. He dropped back to pass 16 times, not the best ideal situations in terms of passing the football tonight, but he did exactly what you want him to do. He didn't really turn the ball over, didn't put his team in jeopardy like I think Marcus Mariota did more often than not in this game. So You look at all that and you say they kind of ran an offense similar to what we've seen the Atlanta Falcons do over the course of the season. As long as they get that quarterback to play within himself and really utilize the running game, you find yourself on the winning side of things more often than not. So again, good opportunity there for PJ Walker to bounce back, and it almost feels like he's fended off Baker Mayfield in those discussions. Again, these quarterbacks feel like they're going in kind of two different directions here in terms of the narrative. PJ Walker kind of solidifying himself after a rough outing last week or just a few days ago. Marcus Mariota on the opposite side of things starting to question him. But overall, for the Carolina Panthers, a good bounce back for them. You got to remember what was going on just a couple of days ago. Shelled. 5 touchdowns Joe Mixon had. It was a bad outing. They're firing the coaching staff left and right. They come in here on a short week at home, take care of business. That's a good job there by Steve Wilkes, the interim head coach.
Yeah, Atlanta did rush it for $138 in this one, but nowhere near the onslaught that we saw out of the Bengals just a few days ago. You mentioned just moments ago about the position that Atlanta's in right now, sort of on that cusp of competition, rebuild, identifying pieces. That process has already begun in Carolina. Are you identifying some pieces on this current roster that when they do start rebuilding it, reimagining it in the offseason, who are those pieces here on this current Carolina roster that you could see fitting on a winning team moving forward?
Well, I mean, it's first and foremost, it's Brian Burns. I mean, there's a reason why he didn't get traded at the trade deadline. There were teams, I'm sure, calling the Carolina Panthers after they moved on from Christian McCaffrey saying, hey, you're moving on from a guy like him. What happens with Brian Burns? What are you kind of thinking about with that player? Because he is somebody that you could plug and play, like a Bradley Chubb that we saw move to Miami. He's someone of that caliber that you put into a defense. You're changing that entire way that operation is moving. But they view him as a building block piece. He's somebody who I think could legitimately be an anchor for their defense during this rebuild. J.C. Horn's another one that was playing well tonight. Jeremy Chin, who is not playing in this game, I think is someone who they can build around. So for me, they have pieces on different levels of their defense that they can start to build around. And we all know this. If you start building a respectable defense, you can allow that offense to kind of mature and kind of develop slowly if they're not asked to chuck it 40 times in a game. So for me, that's the biggest thing. Brian Burns is going to be the face of this franchise for the next few years here. And then beyond that, it's trying to find that quarterback. It's trying to find those pieces on the offensive side of the ball. DJ Moore's a good player. We'll see what happens with him going forward. Donta Foreman, maybe he's found a home here in this backfield for the years to come. Who's to say? But for me, it's the defense right now. That seems to be their budding identity. Brian Burns to the face of the organization. And now it's about trying to figure out that quarterback position like it's been for the last few years.
Yeah, 4 quarterbacks on that roster in some capacity or another, and I'm not sure any of them will be the starter come week 1 next year. We shall see. On this night, it's a 10-point win over a divisional foe. Tyler, thank you. And don't forget, the conversation continues on the Pick 6 podcast. Our guys breaking it all down. Will Brinson, John Breach, Ryan Wilson, bringing you all the latest news and notes across the NFL. Download, subscribe, and enjoy the Pick 6 podcast.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.